Today we're going over the final part of the Infinity Castle arc, because right before the explosion and the fall into the Infinity Castle, Zenitsu was acting more serious and determined than usual. He insisted on doing something during his own time without Tanjiro's help, not to mention his face was covered in blood as if he smashed his head somewhere. Once inside the Infinity Castle, Zenitsu comes face to face with Kaigaku, his senior under their lightning-using master Jigoro. But in no way was it a happy reunion. He tells Kaigaku to come out with a cutting and aggressive tone, and we see that his former senpai has changed sides. He's now a tool for Muzan, having taken over by Gyutaro and Daki's position as an upper six. The hatred and disgust on Zenitsu's face tells you where this is about to go. After announcing that Shinobu has died, we shift to Kiryu, the new leader of the Ubuyashiki clan, and how he has lost half of his family in this fight already. He keeps track of which slayers are fighting which demons and where Muzan is. That's when his sister lets him know Zenitsu's facing Kaigaku, leading us back to their stare down. Kaigaku puts him down as usual, but Zenitsu's changed since receiving the letter. Their master's death wasn't from old age or battle, but from the shame of having Kaigaku become a demon. It was an extremely painful death, with no one there to chop his head off. Kaigaku feels zero remorse for this, and this bad attitude has nothing to do with his transformation. He's always been selfish and only willing to respect those who value him best. Zenitsu's beyond enraged, content to cut Kaigaku down with his first form. In contrast, Kaigaku can do all but the first one, arguably the most important. Through his demonic powers, Kaigaku's lightning switches to black, but Zenitsu's first form is still faster, nearly cutting his neck on the first try. Kaigaku realizes how much Zenitsu's grown since their day's training, and let's be real, he's probably getting worried. Despite starting in the same place, Kaigaku ended up faced with the deadliest threat imaginable, Kokushibo. For him, when faced with such an obstacle, you give up. Because, just like Muzan, Kaigaku believes in survival above morality. Without hesitation, Kaigaku laid down his blade before Kokushibo. He'll do anything to survive, just like how he stole money from the other orphans in Guillaume's care. When he was homeless, he drank dirty water. If it gives him more time to rise to the next challenge, then it's valid. Kokushibo offered him a chance. He required a larger amount of blood due to him being a breath user, someone who opposes demons. The only catch was if he spilled a single drop, death would be awaiting him. Even with that threat, Kaigaku shakily brought the opportunity to his mouth and was successfully turned. And because he'd experienced the crushing fear that Kokushibo presented, Zenitsu meant nothing to him. It's especially hard to take him seriously when he was constantly crying and pleading with Jigoro during training. What angered Kaigaku most was Jigoro's belief that they should both be successors. Recalling that makes his blood boil. As he readies himself to kill Zenitsu, he uses the second breathing form, and it unleashes dark, crackling flashes. With his demonic cells, he's able to perform multiple attacks in a row, but all that tells Zenitsu is that he's eaten so many people. Once again, he's unfazed by his choices. His view of right and wrong are skewed towards his own existence. This explains why he led the demon to the other orphans, getting them all killed. He keeps slicing at Zenitsu with lightning, even searing into his flesh with the enhanced forms. Cut after cut hit Zenitsu, since the forms come too fast for him to dodge each one. But as he falls through the levels, Zenitsu can't help but remember their life together. At the time, other slayers spoke badly of Kaigaku for not mastering the first form of lightning breathing. Still, Kaigaku saw himself as above everyone else. And yet, Zenitsu couldn't help but defend him to stop their harsh comments. But instead of appreciating the action, Kaigaku insulted Zenitsu for attacking higher-ranked swordsmen. They shared a mutual dislike of each other, but that didn't stop Zenitsu from respecting Kaigaku. He held him in almost as high a regard as Jigoro. No matter how they showed their affection for him, Kaigaku just couldn't appreciate their gestures. He was never satisfied, and with Jigoro gone, Zenitsu can't hold on to his connection with Kaigaku anymore. Still falling, Zenitsu's body alights with yellow streaks, releasing a new form called Honai Kazuchi no Kami. Not only does it cut Kaigaku's head from his neck, but his necklace is sliced in half too. The form was so quick that it was hard for even Kaigaku to understand. But instead of appreciating the way Zenitsu pushed himself to overcome him, Kaigaku takes it as being left out from learning a secret form. That Zenitsu's the favorite student. But Kaigaku's saltiness knows no bounds. All he can think about is how a lowly man like Zenitsu could ever come up with his own form. Even as he cracks apart, his anger grows, leaving him with negative thoughts. He consoles himself by noticing that Zenitsu's too weak to save himself and will be dying soon. But unlike Kaigaku, Zenitsu, who will come to his aid, Yushido makes a point of letting Kaigaku know the error in his thinking and how it's leading him to a lonely death filled with emptiness. Afterwards, Yushido hops up to Zenitsu and grabs him out of the air. They land safely on flat ground and Zenitsu lost in thought. In a semi-conscious state, he arrives at a crossroads. On one side of the river is Jigoro, while he's on the other, the side of the living. Zenitsu calls for him, blaming himself for everything that's happened, including turning Kaigaku into a demon. His only wish was to make his master proud, and to repay him for saving his life years ago. Still, Jigoro doesn't respond, so Zenitsu worries that he's disappointed him so badly that he hates him. Suddenly, he starts being pulled away from the water by vines. Jigoro calls his name, and with tear-filled eyes, lets him know that he is indeed proud of him. Even without being a crybaby, that would make anyone cry. Zenitsu awakens to Yushido treating his wounds, and Murata and the other swordsmen guarding them from threats. Slowly, Zenitsu's eyes open, filled with tears, but it's an unusual scene to wake up to. Yushido's complaining at Murata to pay attention in case they get jumped, while the corpse members have no idea he's a demon in disguise. Oh, and he has to treat Zenitsu quickly, otherwise the cracks formed from Kaigaku's attacks will rip his flesh and eyes apart. Murata's frustration grows hearing the scary information since he really wants him to survive this. And just to throw salt in the wound, Yushido explains that Zenitsu only won because Kaigaku hadn't fully trained his techniques. This makes Murata scream like Zenitsu normally would, and a group of lowly demons come their way. Yushido, as one of the demons not created by Muzan, is outside of his control. Tamayo convinced him to dress as a slayer and to blend in with them, but he certainly made it known how much he didn't want that. They may not suspect him, but they could feel something's different about Yushido, and his attitude towards them certainly doesn't help, like saying to hurry up and kill the demons. As he moves Zenitsu out of danger, he senses Tanjiro's about to meet some trouble. Meanwhile, his master, Tamayo's stuck next to a giant ball of flesh that Muzan has created to better absorb her and eliminate the poison she's put into him. There's still time before she's completely taken in, so she begs for someone to find her before then. And yes, it looks just like a demon meatball. But the demon slayers aren't the only ones struggling. Back at the Ubuyashiki estate, Kiriya's sister is mourning for their lost family members. But it's distracting from her task of drawing the layout of the maze-like castle where Muzan brought the fighters. Without looking at her, he reminds her not to let her emotions take over her, and that she has an important role. They will win this. Outside, acting as guards, are the retired Hashira, Rengoku, and Tengen. Even they can't help but be impressed with Kiriya's strength as a leader. Considering everything that's transpired, likewise, Rengoku doesn't want to disappoint his son, Kyojiro, by fulfilling his role as a protector to these young siblings. Back to Zenitsu, Murata struggles to hold him up while they trudge through the castle. Zenitsu's reverted to his old crying and whining self, with snot and tears covering his face, and Murata worries since they got separated from the group they were in. Thankfully, there are some allies coming right around the corner. Kanao and Inosuke. They went through a hellish battle too, but at least they can walk on their own. But now it's time to circle back to another team. In this new environment, with lots of small demons coming for them, Obanai has no problem holding them back with serpent breathing. He manages to take them all down with one move, intent on keeping them away from Mitsuri. And if you remember, Mitsuri joined the corpse to find a strong husband, so of course, she's impressed, and swoons a bit. On the other hand, Obanai's dotting on her is a distraction that causes some slip-ups later. After getting deeper within the Infinity Castle, Mitsuri spots the Biwa demon in charge of the changing space. As we've often seen her, she's sitting on a tatami mat and focused solely on shifting walls and floors to push enemies into danger. As we get a close-up on Nakami, they spot her ranking of 4 among the upper demons. Obanai points out that 4 was already killed before. It was Hentengu. But yes, he's since been replaced by Nakami. Muzan seems to be desperate to replenish his ranks ever since they've been cut down one by one. Mitsuri's determined to take Nakami down, considering Shinobu was younger than her and did her best against Doma. But that thought is enough to let her attention slip, and Nakami shifts her off sideways with her blood demon arm. She slams into a wall instead of slicing the demon, falling downward from the impact of the crash. Nakami's face shows no emotion, but Mitsuri's nose is bleeding, and she looks completely mortified at the mishap. In 2 quick bounces, Obanai gets her back up to safety. He doesn't quite make fun of her, but the fact that he can't make eye contact while suggesting she pays attention until they know Nakami's technique speaks volumes. Even the snake looks ashamed. Mitsuri's face burns red, but she agrees. Nakami strums her biwa, shifting more sections of the walls and floors to push them apart. Mitsuri's openly being targeted now, and the biwa demon having seen how easily she makes mistakes. But her agility and flexibility are nothing to laugh at, as she flips out of peril. Multiple rooms and walls are sent zooming towards Obanai next, pushing him to the edge of the space and further from the demon. Mitsuri worries for him, but she doesn't have time for that when she's slammed into from behind and forced upward in an attempt to flatten her. In a flash, she shreds through the building at her back. After experiencing that though, Mitsuri has a better understanding of Nakami's power. She jumps across more buildings, spotting the tendrils from Nakami's position, but just like before, the demon doesn't look her way or react, which spells trouble. Instead of making her bounce off a wall, this time she makes Mitsuri slip through sliding doors. Not just that, but she gets spit out somewhere lower, sending her falling down into the depths again. By now you should realize that Mitsuri is the main comic relief for this intense arc, but she's also a bit of a hothead who doesn't consider every possibility before jumping into things. With Mitsuri screaming her lungs out, Obanai's curved sword aims for Nakami's neck. His speed fails to reach her when she sends him away next. It's not a technique that causes massive damage, but it's one that ensures no one can get close to her for long, and definitely stretches out the battle. Nearby, Mitsuri's clinging for her life on a ledge, but we know that she's got the muscle strength to pull herself up. Every surviving fighter is made aware of Genya and Tokido's death in the battle against Kokushibo. Unsurprisingly, it hits them hard, with Tanjiro taking it the worst after just recently forming bonds with both of them. Sadly, that's not the only bad news. Tamayo's poisons and body are going to be fully ingested, and Muzan's going to be at full force shortly. In fact, the squads are getting too close to where he was in a cocoon this whole time. Kiryu tries to warn them to turn back before the unthinkable happens, but his orders don't reach the swordsman in time. Just as the crow tells them to stand by, they're staring at the giant piece of flesh, and Muzan rips his way out. They don't have time to move or blink, and they're being ripped apart like strips of paper at his monstrous hand. Screaming for them to wait for the Hashira, Kiryu turns frantic when no one responds to his warnings. Muzan even strikes down the crow that was communicating Kiryu's message to them. The worst has come to pass. Muzan's just been fed a buffet of young meals and regained a lot of his strength. He admits he wishes it was tastier, but seeing as he was weakened, any food is satisfying. He has the gall to thank the Ubuyashiki family for the nutrients too, all while holding Tamayo's head like a plaything. The insults don't end there, because Muzan considers turning the successor Kiryu into a demon to join his ranks since he's lost all of his best members. But Kiryu doesn't give up trying to call away the other demons, to both spare their lives and avoid helping Muzan further. The sadistic demon turns his focus to Tamayo with a smile and confronts her about her concoction meant to turn him back to human. With his finger forcibly shoved through her eye socket, she still offers him only venom. Today, Muzan will be going to hell. He, of course, dismisses the threat since she's not the first to say that to him in all his centuries of life. Seeing him again brings back all the painful memories from her past, and Tamayo begins to weep over her family she unintentionally killed. Cold as ever, Muzan agrees to send her to meet their souls in the afterlife. In a flash, he crushes her skull in his fist, leaving her to gurgle her last breaths. Yushiro, who had been following a corpse member, suddenly falls over with the agony of losing the one who saved his life. The other boy goes to check up on him, with Yushiro scraping his fingers against the ground in fury. He seethes, his eyes bulging from the emotion and his mouth bleeding from biting into his lips. Meanwhile, Muzan has discovered the next squad and slashes through them like a tornado of violence. Limbs and faces scatter across the room, leaving blood and body parts everywhere. Still, Kiryu hasn't stopped trying to keep the living slayers from approaching Muzan. He's desperate for any Hashira to arrive and slow down his massacre. So many have fallen already, including Tamayo. Finally content with his actions, Muzan sits down to await for the stronger swordsman to arrive. Does he think that he's going to kill everyone and conquer the sun? Oh, you bet he does. More than losing his family, and more than being forced to take up the leadership role, what causes Kiryu to finally break is being unable to save so many lives working under him. The pressure has gotten to him and he's spiraling as he blames himself for this butchering. It's too much, too quickly, and he flees like he's undone years of progress in one day. His sister tries to get his attention, calling his name repeatedly. When it doesn't work, she resorts to slapping him really hard. Even he's surprised by how intense it was. Worried she's hurt him when he ends up on the ground, but she doesn't back down, firmly shouting for him to keep a level head and offer the next orders to everyone. Kiryu is shook, dare I say shooketh, but he's also bleeding from his mouth and red from the hit. It works though. Kiryu realizes that he's not alone in this struggle. His father, his grandfather, they all had to deal with this kind of stress. That's enough to push him into action. He sends out more crows, calling for more reinforcements against Muzan as well, but also warns them to keep their distance since he can attack within a wide radius. More importantly, the Hashira have to get there quickly as the strongest member of the corps. And Kiryu doesn't forget to thank his sisters both for their support and for knocking sense back into him. The crows screech about Muzan's return, ordering every single swordsman to rush to his location. Mitsuri's shocked at this development. She and Obanai have been struggling so long with Nakami in her building-sized Jenga game. Likewise, Obanai feels inadequate for spending so much time here, when so many have died defeating their own demons. Unfortunately, they've not been able to make any progress with her movement techniques. Every time they think they're getting to her neck, she pushes them further away. At least she hasn't been able to harm them though. So in terms of combat usefulness, these two can offer the most. They might not be the strongest, but having no injuries that need treatment makes them huge assets to the fight. That might be exactly why Nakami has been keeping them busy. With that in mind, Mitsuri wonders if it might be the best to just ditch the woman and go straight to Muzan. But just as she considers that, she nearly falls into a trap hole again. A mystery hand grabs her just in time. Back at the scene of Muzan's brutality, Tanjiro and Giyu have finally found him. His new look reflects his true self better, but Tanjiro can't help his bubbling emotions as he remembers the scene of his family or Nezuko's transformation, and all those who have died at his hand. Whether directly or not, this time Tanjiro's rage is unbridled. Giyu has to remind him to calm down. It works briefly until Muzan starts his cold-hearted monologue. In his eyes, they shouldn't care about who he killed or why. They should just be grateful they survived. If that's not enough, Muzan compares himself to a calamity, or a worldly event that can't be avoided, as if he never was a human himself. Muzan basically encourages them to get over it and go on with their mundane lives. Honestly, I wonder if Muzan ever was human. And let's not overlook the fact that he accuses them of being a problem that he has to deal with, as if he's completely innocent in this conflict. Tanjiro lets him speak all that garbage though, but once he's done, a cold and penetrating look of hatred pierces through Muzan. He's ready to erase his existence. Even so, Tanjiro's aware enough to know that decapitating him isn't enough. He survived this long for a reason, so there's no way that this duo can take Muzan down alone. So they all have to stall until everyone else gets there. This also gives them a chance to analyze his techniques or body. Placidly, Muzan attacks with his sharp appendages, swinging them wildly around the room. Even with their growth, the two Slayers struggled to avoid the unbelievable range and speed of his attacks. Tanjiro darts inside quickly, dodging some deadly attacks only to get his eye slashed in the next moment. Gyu's all too aware that attacking Muzan's not possible for now, and they shouldn't compare their fight with Akaza to this. And he's been at the head of his demons for a reason. Calmly, Muzan recognizes that they intend to fight it out until the sun rises, but it means nothing while they're in the castle underground. Not to mention, he points out that there's only 3 Hashira remaining, which is incorrect. We know better, but for some reason Muzan thinks Mitsuri and Obanai have died. Through Nakami's eyes, they're bloodied and lying dead from her moving buildings. But since she shares her vision with Muzan, that's also what he sees. With one working eye, Tanjiro's skill has dropped slightly as he tries to avoid the sword-like arms. Gyu worries for him since it's such a serious injury, but he does his best using his nose as he's used to. That doesn't stop him from banging into a wall behind him, with Gyu unable to save him in time. Thankfully, that's when Mitsuri busts in, whipping her sword around behind Muzan. Muzan's surprised, sure, but so is Gyu, who believed that she was dead. Though she attacks Muzan directly, he heals so quickly as if she didn't. And once again, she can't hide her comedic reaction. As for Tanjiro, he's been shielded by Obanai, who tells him to go back since he's in the way. Beat to hell and one eye destroyed, and all he can think is how glad he is to see them both alive. Obanai can't believe it. This turn of events gets Muzan to finally react, demanding to know what Nakami's doing. Well, remember that nice demon lady that Muzan crushed? Yushiro wasn't about to let that slide. Using his paper eyes and his fingers dug inside Nakami's head, he controls her sight. Not just that, he can communicate his vengeful intent directly to Muzan. His hold of her makes the Infinity Castle shake, and his eyes, bloody from his technique, fill with tears. Everyone feels the tremors, making it hard to move, but Mitsuri knows she needs to attack Muzan. But the fear, just his hateful look, is enough to make her stop. She wishes Gyome was there to help, and leads us into a much-needed flashback to Yushiro. With his usual attitude, he told her to listen to him if she had any brains. Mitsuri agreed, and he explained that she would need to move around unpredictably while he went for Nakami. That would give him a chance to grab her and take over her vision. After praising him, she went along with the plan, and the rest is history. Now, Tanjiro and Mitsuri struggle to stay out of danger with the tug-of-war of power between the two demons. But Muzan's always been spiteful, and once he realizes Nakami's being controlled, he goes after Yushiro. He absorbs his cells from his hands, pushing Yushiro to fight back harder. The Slayer with him offers himself as food to Yushiro if it means defeating Muzan, but he'd never accept that. With Muzan focused on Yushiro though, Gyu and Obanai can move in to strike. But since he's never been a patient person, Muzan decides to just destroy Nakami to end this. With her dead, the Infinity Castle can't exist and will collapse on everyone still inside. Demons can survive that, but the corpse members definitely can't. As everything shakes and cracks, Tanjiro tries to keep his distance from Muzan, only to fall next to the swordsman in pieces. And even when he's slashed, Tanjiro throws a sword through Muzan's head to stop him from hurting Mitsuri next. In a blast of debris and sound, everyone is ejected outside for the final countdown. And that is the end of the Infinity Castle arc. Meaning next, we'll be going into the final battle against Muzan. So if you haven't already, guys, please subscribe for that next video and more Demon Slayer content like this. Also, if you liked the video, please give it a like. I'll see you in the next one.